Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Sine, and on behalf of Carasoft Technology, I would like to welcome you to our Flowsome webinar, Federal Success through Salesforce DevSecOps. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. The audio portion of this webinar can be heard through your speakers, and all other lines have been muted to control background noise. If you would like to ask a question during the webinar, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer those questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be accessible from the link sent out after the event. To tell you a little bit more about Carasoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider serving the federal, state, and local government, as well as the healthcare and education industries. Carasoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors. Our representative's information will be available at the end of this presentation, so please do not hesitate to call or email us at any point so we may assist you. Thank you all again for joining us. Speaking today will be V, the Senior Director of Product Marketing from Flowsome, Adilson Jardam, the Salesforce Public Sector VP of Solution Engineering, North America, Carrie Kramer, Area Vice President at Salesforce, and Brian Boardman, the Federal Salesforce Practice Area Leader from IBM. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Thanks everyone for joining us today. So as mentioned, I lead the Federal Salesforce practice here at IBM, and certainly one of the many partners that is here with Flowsome and Salesforce. And as we start to think about a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis, imagine co-creating and delivering with experiences that are truly measured in outcomes. This has been one of the founding principles that we've had with our federal Salesforce practice as we go ahead and we serve a multitude of our federal clients and agencies. This in particular has been the bedrock on what we do and certainly driving types of results that we've had. As we think about the virtual enterprise, and all of us are certainly very familiar with that now as we've all come through COVID, and now where we've returned to work, that virtual enterprise is still very, very fluid for all of us. As we continue to look at what are the key outcomes, you can imagine those things that are really important to us, like the architects, the continuing platforms and ecosystems, the various offerings that we have, and how, of course, those are all parlayed into growth, efficiencies, and innovation. Certainly, it's that last one around innovation that's key, near and dear to all of our hearts, as we all look to feel and see how we modernize experiences for our end users, whether those are employees, our citizens, or candidly, all of our foreign dignitaries. As we think about kind of focusing on the combination of our ecosystems and the capabilities and we building out the agency's growth, the agenda on how we accelerate things is one of the key models. As we think about the results we've started to see, we've seen an increase in over 400% of our security threats, 15% increases in citizen-facing activities, and a number of others that are here that are near and dear to us. As we look to try and address some of these, we really look at one of our examples that we've used with one of our clients here in the Department of Justice. Thank you so much. So what did we need to do here? So as this started to come around, one of these examples that we've had is around the Department of Justice, which is, of course, as you know, one of the largest agencies here in the federal government. What we helped them try to do and what they needed to do was to build out a very strategic case management solution. This implementation needed to be done quickly, and the functionality needed to be repeatable so that it could be planned and deployed in other business units across the agency. How we approach this is really around the solution and what was really important to us. With a limited amount of time and budget allocated for this initiative, Flowsome was the undisputed solution of choice. Flowsome is the only Salesforce native DevOps solution and the only solution of its kind that does not allow any data or information to leave the Salesforce Gov Cloud or the boundaries therein. Thanks to this architecture, Flowsome inherits all of the Salesforce security controls, leading to swift approvals and usage for that agency, which was a major benefit for both not only the agency, but for us as the partners to really get going very, very quickly to go ahead and help that agency with their configuration and the deployment of Salesforce. One of the team members that was on there, was commonly quoted As you know, what we needed to do is maximize the amount of time that we spent designing and configuring and minimize the amount of time spent on building change sets and performing manual deployment steps. This is pretty big. This is like one of the unsung heroes behind any deployment. What we all don't realize is, of course, is that configuration that's really required to help our applications not only capture the business requirements, the automation, the workflows, but also the end user's experiences. As we compile all that, moving that from one stage environment to the next and ultimately into production is a pretty big effort. And you don't think about that until you're there and you're looking at your go live and all the important kind of elevations that need to take place. As a result of using Flowsum, we were able to repeatedly and very, very specifically address the priorities that were important. Flowsum enabled the traceability of these requirements that are related to existing components so that the future implementations could select their requirements for reuse of those components over and over again. In addition, our technical team was able to remain focused on the tight implementation timeline that we had and was able to plan and focus on the story points and was able to actually deliver real results. These real results, for us, it was average of 25% more in every single sprint that we did for our clients. This is pretty impressive and really something that's great. As you know, resources and time are the two things you can't get more of when you're on a time-tight schedule. So with that, the agency was able to experience the value of Flowsum's tool firsthand. They got to see it, they got to feel it, they got to experience that benefit, and has continued to use Flowsum after each and every build and after every elevation and promotion that we've done, while maintaining the tight security controls in their operations. IBM Federal swiftly recognizes the acceleration of the client's business model and was dependent on the digital transformation and facilitated this implementation with Flowsum to overcome every roadblock that came in front of us. The Salesforce case management initiative was complete and it was successfully deployed at this particular agency. The agency has continued to look for new innovations and continues to advance in their ongoing capabilities that they provide both their citizens, every single one of the courts, and certainly all of the constituents that they have. With that, why don't I turn it over to V to help us kind of go through things a little bit more in Flowsum and look a little bit more about the product. V?
Thank you. So I'm V, the senior director of product marketing here at Flowsum. And where I wanted to take the conversation is now talking about some of these outcomes that you are able to achieve by using the Flowsum DevSecOps platform. Imperative is this concept of CI/CD and making sure that you can focus on developing features that matter to your end customers and empowering this digital transformation. While doing this, it is imperative to have the right security posture and compliance to build security as part of the process. Ultimately, this platform and our platform allows you to accelerate innovation and have that scale with your existing team while reducing costs. Moving this to understanding why Flowsum is the tool for DevOps on Salesforce for public sec is we are native to Salesforce. This means the questions you're going to get from your InfoSec team is this FedRAMP certified? We are on top of Salesforce and built natively. And this means that if Salesforce is approved and you are using Salesforce, that we are applicable to you. We are the only solution that can enable zero trust, ensure that the data residency, as well as manage your cybersecurity posture as part of the development software lifecycle. And this is absolutely imperative as you are making digital transformation to make sure that the platform that is helping you accelerate innovation is building security into the process. So in this scenario, some of the things that Flowsum is uniquely positioned to help PubSec help tackle some of the DevOps problems that arise as part of this digital transformation. Some of the challenges faced with change sets is really understanding the conflicts and the dependencies as moving into production. We help our customers improve deploying to production up to 50%. We help developers understand and help be able to do peer reviews as well as merge code together, allowing your teams to focus on development and being able to merge code on different features as part of the release in a modern CI/CD fashion. We give complete visibility and autonomy for the developers and as well the release managers to work hand in hand together to accelerate innovation and make sure that they are focusing in on developing new features instead of rework or quality issues or debugging. So we put the developers in an advantage to be focusing on things that deliver value instead of reworking and dealing with quality issues and helping them accelerate these new features to market. So we'll take it away now into what the Folsom platform is. So we have 3 products, one centered around enabling your DevOps, and then Trust Center, which can manage your cybersecurity posture, as well as managing your data with data management and backup. So very exciting stuff here, everyone, and we'll now turn it to our Q&A and fireside conversation.
Thank you, V. We're now moving into the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to include them in the Q&A pod below, and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll give everyone a minute or two to submit any questions. If we do not get to your questions during this webinar, do not worry, our team will reach out to you offline. We're also happy to set up any private meetings later to discuss details further. For our first question, why is DevOps a huge opportunity for the public sector, especially regarding trends towards digital transformation? V?
So I think the key term for everyone is digital transformation. So building applications, having a better customer experience, and allowing you to do more with less is absolutely vital. As part of DevOps, adopting modern practices with CI/CD, where you're continuously delivering, continuously integrating, automating away the release process is absolutely vital. How often have we been stuck where we are looking forward to a release that takes 2 to 3 weeks to package up and release? We want to enable developers to be able to push features as quickly as possible to customers that care about it. The public sector is facing the same things that the private sector is, a lack of enough resources, features and functionality are required at breakneck speeds. So by implementing modern CI/CD pipelines and capabilities, you have the ability to drive innovation and accelerate value to your end customers. So it's really exciting for us. Some of the conversations that we have are people or folks, our customers, are really looking at DORA metrics, which is a standard introduced by Google, and saying, hey, now with our deployments and our accelerations, we can actually have visibility into the analytics of our DevOps and really pay close attention to the value we're bringing to the rest of the organization.
Awesome. Thank you for going in. Thank you for your answer. Adilson, what are some common challenges or setbacks you see in regards to innovation on the Salesforce platform in the public sector?
Yeah, great question, Ben, and thank you. So a couple of thoughts as we think about what DevSecOps implies. One of the obvious illustrations is that you want to be able to enable innovation, meaning in this case, continuous development, bringing new capabilities, features, enrichment to the application and your users. One of the things that I generally recommend to customers and encourage them to consider is from the onset of their Salesforce journey or implementation to consider what that pipeline of development looks like. Do you need a sandbox? Do you want an integration environment, etc., before you think about what the final production environment looks like? And it's really important to distinguish a couple of things here. One, the principles of DevOps are not entirely new, but what is new is the preponderance of different technologies and in many cases, open source technologies and different partners, and how you integrate and marry up all of those capabilities and features into one solution set. from the Salesforce perspective, that's where the platform becomes such a powerful value proposition, which is the target platform already exists. And yet what we tend to see is folks not considering the innovation aspect, the continuous integration development aspect of what that means. And in this case, as our partners have so eloquently described here, being able to sequence in multiple pieces of development code and development streams to an end environment or target environment, which is your production application, is a consideration you should always have up front in how you want to deliver that constant stream of innovation to your customers and consumers. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you for that insight. Our next question, this one is for you, Carrie. What does it take to build a successful DevSecOps strategy?
Thanks, Ben. So I could probably talk about this for 30 minutes. Building the effective strategy really starts with a few key tenets in mind. The first is software is never done and an ATO is never done, right? These are infinite loops. They're continuous pursuits. Second is cyber adversaries never quit. No more so than today are we seeing constant threats that are evolving and changing. So with this in mind, your DevSecOps strategy needs to outline your objectives and your outcomes, but also include some specific details about the tools, technologies, measures, and architectures that you are going to use. Your primary outcome should enable the organization to deliver resilient software capability at the speed of relevance. And it definitely needs to include integrated security at every step. Simply put, you need to develop a strategy that will allow you to deliver faster and more securely while achieving consistent governance and control. It's really a balance. As far as governance, one of the best practices that we have seen, especially within the federal community, is to use a center of excellence model. This will allow you across the enterprise to establish and communicate a vision and effectively to allow you to socialize the change in culture that's necessary and to set the stage for effective communication and collaboration across the platform. Really, you want to focus on that shift left model, right? Involving security from the start, but also involving your stakeholders from the start. So one of the things I like to say is you want to go slow to go fast. You really need to take the time to set the strategy, define your vision, always putting security as an integral part of that, but also figuring out how you're going to set up continuous testing, monitoring across people, platform, process. Another part of this that's super integral is training. Your communication, but also how you're going to enable your development team to be able to support continuous improvement. Finally, you also want to make sure that what you're doing in your strategy ties back directly to your agency mission. Thanks, Ben.
Awesome. I believe this next question would be best answered by you, Adilson. What are some common mistakes teams make when implementing a secure DevOps strategy?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Ben. I want to dovetail on quite a bit of what Carrie described there, because I think it's really important to consider the stakeholder objectives and perspectives as well. So it's not only what did the development team or the implementation team overlook in implementing these, but did they align it to the agency mission, the executive strategy for that agency or department, et cetera. And what we mean by that, extending again on what Carrie described, is do they understand what you're doing? Do they understand what the controls look like? Do you understand the GRC or governance risk and compliance framework that you should be operating within? One of the observations I have across the spectrum of the customers that I support, it's really attractive, Salesforce as a platform, to quickly deploy an application. Why? Everything's built into the platform. You're focused on the business requirements of the business workflow, and it's very easy to deploy an application quickly. So we tend to see that early success being a motivator for overlooking this governance model around the SecDevOps maturity as well. So looking at from that perspective, it's that first application or two applications are really generally going to be very quick and very successful. But what's the platform objective and vision? How do you take those two applications and turn it into 20 or 30 applications? And part of that objective should include, how do we build this in to a SecDevOps pipeline that looks secure, that looks complete, and that aligns to the existing mechanisms within the agency. And that, to Kerry's point, is really important. Go slow to go first. If you don't have that up front, you're going to end up having to retrofit it anyway. The cost to the agency, the cost to the mission is much more significant on the back end when you're scrambling to address some of the pitfalls of trying to do innovation, development, and delivery when you don't have the model set up correctly. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you. And at this moment, we will be launching our first poll before we get into our next question. While you answer that poll, our next question came in. And our question is, what are some challenges to implementing a DevSecOps solution? Cultural change, funding, legacy IT systems. Can you elaborate on that, Kerry?
Oh, sure, Ben, I'd be happy to. So from my own experience, some of the challenges that I have seen really come down to a couple of areas. One is culture, and specifically there, I think about accountability, right? Have you, across the enterprise, do you understand ownership of the different pieces? You definitely want to avoid the pitfall of the silo effect, right? That's going to lead to disjointed communications, failing to, monitor code perhaps, and some of those types of avenues that lead you in the wrong direction, right? It falls outside of the definition of having that proper DevSecOps strategy. You want to really make sure that you're continuously promoting transparency. So around that accountability and defining ownership, I think that's one key area. The second is a little more tactical, but what I often see is things are floating along fine, progress is being made, and then an unknown happens, right? And then people go into reactive mode and they stop following some of the process. Communication again breaks down. People start putting in workarounds, and they fail to follow some of the automation best practices. You end up maybe scanning the wrong things. You're not testing end to end appropriately. Maybe you have some misconfigurations, and so what that does is it just creates a snowball effect. So I would definitely say you want to have a plan in place for how you're going to respond to risks, how you're going to handle those unknown unknowns. And one of the things I like to think about in that perspective is you don't want to just have a strategy or have these things in place. You want to make them actionable. So even with your risk, for example, I know that's a major part about, DevSecOps is communicating those risks. You need to understand when you're going to implement the risk mitigation, not just reporting on things for the sake of reporting, right? Lastly, I would say, this is directly related with the other two, but really just failing to follow that enterprise strategy. If you aren't continuously checking back with, your data model, with your architecture and the overall strategy in hand, you can then end up, building in the wrong direction. And so it's just so incredibly important to have that constant communication and that stakeholder engagement. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Kerry. Our next question, what are some trends you are seeing regarding security in the public sector? B?
Thank you, Ben. So one of the topics of conversations that we're having is that Forrester just released their 2023 developer predictions, and their number one headliner was, and then I just had a conversation with a Forrester analyst on this, is that there will be a headline cybersecurity breach using low-code platforms in 2023. And this has spurred a lot of conversation about what DevSecOps is. And very specifically, we've had conversations of folks coming to us and asking like, hey, DevSecOps, shifting left, everything we're talking about, these are some high-level concepts. Can you give me something actionable that I can do on my platform? How can I protect myself? What does this mean? Very simply, I'm going to give a few key items about how the InfoSec and security teams can work closer with developers to accelerate innovation is building security policy as code. Whenever developers are checking something in, do you have a set of policies that you can enable the developer to understand how they're changing the cybersecurity posture? Imperative is understanding roles and permissions. Are they being changed? Are you taking any data and perhaps exposing it unintentionally? Are you making changes that are changing the underlying administrative functions associated with your developer functionality? Is there any third-party apps or data hooks that potentially expose your organization to more of an attack surface? Moving on from that, do you have the ability to monitor for threats and remediate them? And ultimately, are you auditing and creating compliance to ensure that you're meeting the regulations that are required? Putting these into effect as part of the development lifecycle, while not easy, is imperative to be able to protect yourself in the future and put the right cybersecurity policies and practices in place to ensure that you are making sure that your cybersecurity posture is remaining compliant.
Thank you, V. Our next question, and I will launch a poll as I'm going through this next question. What can teams do to be successful at innovation on the Salesforce platform? I think that's for you, Adilson.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So we've touched on quite a number of these. I think the governance, risk, compliance aspect is super important. I'd say when we look ahead at what does innovation actually mean, from a Salesforce perspective, we know that we're a huge advantage in this space. As an example, if we take the recent executive order on customer experience, well, what does that mean? That means agencies are now required to take that element of customer or consumer experience or citizen experience and factor that in as part of their development requirements and their model for customer service. So when we think about that, you have to be very flexible and responsive to that, as one example of an executive order, of course, and then also be able to continuously improve on what that means. So if you're able to offer, let's say, a citizen portal, right, as a front door to your agency service or agency offering, well, what experience do you want those users to have? And how do you continuously iterate over improvements on that? So it might be, let's stand one up today because we have a legislative requirement to stand something up quickly, but how do you continue to develop and evolve and manage those? And that's really where the discussion around DevSecOps becomes so critical. If you don't have that in place already, what you end up doing are one-off solutions, and in many cases in silos. And as you look at the outcomes of those from the agency perspective, there are a number of applications that do not fit inside of the framework of what we as the agency development team or the agency IT team considers part of the enterprise applications. So there's a risk in not doing that correctly and working to ensure that that's part of the framework as well. The other thing I would encourage folks to do, and this is something that we don't always talk about, but one of the ways that I find is most important in ensuring success, whether it's with integrators, SIs, additional development teams, or co-engineering efforts, the DevSecOps framework and blueprint provide the way to communicate that. how do we expect you, we as the agency expect you as the service provider, integrator, et cetera, to partake in our enterprise methodology. So just like the enterprise architecture artifacts were so important to us in the early 2000s, this is an extension of that. What is the enterprise architecture requirement to participate in the development and operational release of technology and software and solutions? So I think, once again, bring it right back to what does that look like? How do you communicate that? And how do you expect it to work in the context of the rapid delivery of solutions and service to the constituents? Back to you, Ben.
Thank you for your answer, Nielsen. We're moving on to our last question now. If you have any more questions, please include them and we will reach out to you offline. But our last question has two parts. Do you have any examples of projects you've worked with the DoD, specifically the Department of the Air Force? Also curious, do you have a relationship with Air Force's Cloud One, or is that a competitor?
Yeah, so Ben, I did offer a response to that, but to Mr. Gist here, I did want to reiterate. So from a Salesforce perspective, the Air Force is an existing customer. We have a number of really interesting examples of solutions we've been able to fashion with our Air Force customers. So I'd be happy to share that offline and point you in that direction. Cloud One, just like Sea Army and other solutions, those tend to be a infrastructure as a service internal to those departments or those branches of the service. So we don't see those as competitors in as much as we offer a SaaS solution. So ours is software as a service. It's already onboarded and ATO'd in a number of these environments, especially within the Air Force. So we don't see that as a competitive aspect at all, because there's always going to be a requirement for some solutions that are only available on-prem, that aren't offered as platform as a service or software as a service, and those being more accessible and available to internal customers, I think is really the purpose of Cloud One and the others, as I mentioned, like Sea Army, et cetera. That being said, for folks that aren't familiar with the Salesforce portfolio, we also have our technologies like MuleSoft, like Tableau, that certainly do find their way into Cloud One and other internal solutions, because they're able to go on-prem as well and be leveraged and ATO'd internally. So that does accelerate those deployments for customers as well. I hope that helps.
All right, thank you. That just about concludes our webinar for today. I would like to thank our partners, Flowsum, IBM, and Salesforce, and I would like to thank all of you, the participants, for joining us today. We hope we provided you and your organization with helpful information. We will be sending out a follow-up email with access to the recording and our contact information should you have any additional questions. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.